Good afternoon, everyone. This is Atmospheric Alex here, back with another severe weather outlook and discussion forecast video for today. We're going to be talking about our upcoming severe weather outbreak sequence that could occur over the next week. And we're going to start off the video here with our day one convective outlook. We are talking about an enhanced risk for severe weather for portions of Wyoming there, Nebraska, Colorado, where things could get a little bit significant later on. We have that slight risk area as well. We have another slight risk up into portions of Wisconsin later on today, and also a slight risk for portions of Utah as well. So very interesting risk areas out there. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at our primary hazards. We have a 5% chance of a tornado up here, potentially a very photogenic tornado in those areas, as Colorado, Wyoming kind of goes a bit crazy sometimes. We have a bit of a tornado risk up in Wisconsin as well, though that doesn't look too concerning at the moment. In terms of our wind risk, we do have a risk for very significant 75 to even upwards of 85 mile an hour winds here in our hatched area. So that is going to be something to watch out for later on. And lastly, we do have a risk for a gigantic hail later on this evening. We're talking about a SIG 2 hail risk, so hail upwards of baseball to even greater than softball size is going to be likely. So that is definitely a main risk we all need to watch out for. And again, a hail risk up here in Wisconsin as well. Going into tomorrow, we don't have too much to talk about other than another large slight risk for severe weather. In terms of our tornado chances here, could have a risk for strong tornadoes in northern Oklahoma, southern Kansas. We're going to be watching that area very closely. In terms of our wind, just a general 15% wind risk, and our hail, I do expect a SIG 1 to be issued somewhere. In terms of our day 3 outlook, we only have a marginal risk to talk about, nothing much that could get upgraded in future outlooks though. Now for our day 4 outlook, we have a pretty large slight risk for severe weather for portions of North Dakota and South Dakota. This could, undergo some future upgrades going on in the future, so we'll have to watch out for that. But this is going to be, I guess, one of our main days we really need to watch out for. And aside from that, there's nothing else listed on the SPC. That will definitely change though. And as we go ahead and take a good look at what the future radar could look like here, assuming if this website stays up, because I've been having some technical difficulties again today, we're talking about some supercells forming up here in the portions of Wyoming, and these could be very photogenic in nature. You have one right there, and you have one right there as well. And those could definitely be low precipitation, tornado producing supercells. And so we're going to have to continue to watch that. You can see as that moves on through, moves off to the east a little bit more, they become a little bit more intense. And especially by the time we reach the early parts of tonight, you can see our supercells really exploding out here. Doesn't look too crazy on the HRRR, but again, you have to be very cautious. There are some model biases here, but you have that right there. You have a very good supercell near Scottsbluff, Nebraska there around 8 p.m. tonight. You have one near Fort Morgan, Colorado, one near Yuma, Colorado. Those definitely will all be potentially producing tornadoes. Forwarding the clock a little forward here, you can see these do kind of sustain throughout the night, and you still have severe weather ongoing well into the overnight hours for Nebraska and Kansas. In terms of our surface dew points, we do have some pretty sufficient values here, and not really as much for portions of Wyoming, but you really don't need much up there to get severe weather going. Going further off to the south, though, you do have a nice plume of low to mid 60 degree dews, where most of your storms will fire off today. That is where our enhanced risk of severe weather is located, and it all makes sense. And your dew points will continue to rise a bit getting into the overnight hours. Storm energy will be pretty elevated across those areas as well. Again, not so much in Wyoming. You do have a few pockets upwards of 2,000 Cape, which for that area is definitely going to cause some issues for sure. But down here, you do have Cape between 2,000 to 3,000. That is definitely sufficient enough for severe, even significant severe weather, especially on the hail front of things. And that continues to move on through, and you see your 3,000 storm energy lasting into Kansas into the overnight hours. Now, kind of a sense of where our tornado target could be as we use our 0 to 3 kilometer Cape. I would like to note you do have a few valleys in Wyoming that do have a lot of this, surface to upper level storm energy. So if we have a storm that maybe fires in one of those pockets there, we could potentially be talking about a heightened tornado threat. We're talking maybe something like that, something kind of in that area as well. We're going to have to kind of watch out for that. That is basically the breeding grounds for mesoscale accidents, and that will continue on through. Especially as we go into these areas over here, we see a pretty big uptick. And then again, that's why our main risk area is across those areas, and then that continues on through. And you do have a lot of 3 Cape that sets up. Storm relative helicity, what is that kind of looking like here? We don't have too much of it until we get a little later on into the evening. We do have values around 100 to even 200 in a few areas across, like I said, the same areas that we've been talking about for the last couple minutes there. Now, I did record the segment a little bit later on, but I just wanted to quickly go back to the Illinois and Wisconsin threat today because you guys have been overperforming like crazy this tornado season, and could that possibly continue? We're talking about some potentially, weaker end supercells moving into northern Illinois as we head into around really 4 to 6 p.m. this evening. And we'll have to wait and see if one of those gets a little bit too strong. Could see an isolated tornado threat. We see that supercell there heading near Chicago. That could be a bit of a concern later on. We're just going to have to wait and see. We're really going to have to play things by ear. You can see more supercells up in Wisconsin. And again, we could definitely see a bit of an accident, a bit of a slip up across Illinois later on that could lead to a heightened tornado threat, though that's not a forecast. It's a possibility, and definitely should keep a close eye on it because we have multiple rounds here, and this even continues into the overnight hours, so a lot of opportunities for a tornado threat. Now, moving on to what tomorrow could look like, you're talking about, again, you have some strong severe storms in the morning hours. You have morning convection across those areas. That could definitely hinder the threat later on, but we'll have to watch for that. Storms trekking across eastern Oklahoma, that's really nothing to worry about. But then as we head into tomorrow evening, we see the same exact thing. We see some storms in Wyoming, maybe an isolated supercell. Again, if I was a storm chaser, maybe I'd take my chances and go up there, maybe see a very photogenic tornado. And then the same does also go for Colorado as well. You have some supercells there near Deer Trail, the Lyman area, just like we did yesterday, believe it or not. And then more supercells forming in the Texas Panhandle region as well that may need to be monitored. But it's really going to be, again, northern Oklahoma, southern Kansas. If we see storms fire off properly in those areas, we could be talking about a strong tornado risk, so we do need to monitor that closely. And even more supercells possibly trying to fire going into the overnight hours, so that's something to monitor. As we take a look at our storm energy here, we do have quite a lot of it across the board. Again, up in Wyoming, quite a lot. Even across Colorado, some of your backed winds will provide enough storm energy. And then along your boundary here, where strong tornado risk may occur, if I could talk today, we're talking about storm energy maybe even over 4,000. So yeah, I mean, that is certainly suitable for significant severe weather and strong tornadoes, even approaching 5,000 there near Woodward, Oklahoma tomorrow evening. And what about our tornado target product here? What are we taking a look at here? Again, Wyoming, very favorable up there, but also along your boundary. Notice how you do have a nice surplus of 3 Cape right within there. Woodward, Oklahoma, Enid, Oklahoma. If I were living there, I would definitely monitor the situation closely. I do think, a more elevated tornado risk could occur, and we could even see an intense tornado along that boundary there if a supercell is able to fire off correctly and move right pretty quickly. That deteriorates as we go into the overnight hours as expected. That area will be spinning quite a bit as well as we head later on into the afternoon, talking about 200, almost 250 0 to 1 kilometer helicity. That is suitable for strong tornadoes. Going a little bit further into the evening hours, we continue to see it kind of fluctuate around, increase a bit near 300. That's also suitable for an intense tornado threat. So again, if we see a mesoscale accident right there, things could get a little bit hairy. And supercell composite parameters here, I just kind of wanted to briefly go over this. Big time bullseye over Enid, Oklahoma. Look at that supercell composite of a 20. So a volatile environment will exist along your boundary tomorrow. If you live there, you need to stay very weather aware. Let's go ahead and talk about Illinois some more, shall we? Again, we mentioned it in the beginning of the video for today, but I'm also going to mention it right now for Friday's threat, where on the NAM model, we do have some storms moving into Illinois, some supercells firing up around Effingham, Illinois, Mount Vernon, that area. That all sounds way too familiar, doesn't it? You've gotten a lot of storms this season, and that could go on through Friday evening, continuing on through into southern Indiana as well, possibly. And then we kind of have this interesting feature here. Bunch of storms and supercells trying to form along that front there. Something we need to watch out for. One thing that I noticed a few days ago when we had that crazy tornado outbreak across southern Illinois and southern Indiana is your overall shape of your supercells, right? Because we were kind of talking about supercells shaped up like this, if you will, in this general fashion here, where you had your forward flank right here, kind of this part of the storm, angled in this general direction. And for some reason, we were noticing a lot of tornado genesis, a lot of back-end updrafts here, kind of stacking into your storm, nudging your area of rotation and causing significant tornadoes to occur in a blink of an eye. Even though the storms didn't look that bad to begin with, it quickly uptrended. So we're going to have to wait and see. If we see any supercells of that particular shape on Friday, you definitely need to stay weather aware out there, because we do have sufficient dew point values getting all the way up into the mid-70s. That is going to be very important. And along your boundary later on that evening, you definitely do have some backed winds, a lot of streamwise vorticity to get that spin going for tornadoes. You do have a good bit of storm energy as well, ranging between 2,000 to 3,000 joules of CAPE there. Certainly sufficient enough. Storm relative helicity is pretty strong out there. We do have, again, around 300 to 400, and honestly, on paper, that means there is a risk for strong tornadoes. And because it's Illinois, and because it's the year of 2026, and knowing what's happened thus far, definitely it would keep my guard up pretty high. And then again, along that boundary, you do have sufficient enough helicity values. But then going even further out in time, because the risk doesn't really stop as we head into Saturday here, look at this. We do have some storms and even some supercells firing across North Dakota and South Dakota. We have a supercell there. Look at that one down there near Norris, South Dakota. So again, we're going to have to watch out very closely for those upcoming days of severe weather. You do have dew points approaching the upper 60s, even low 70s in some areas, and we're going to quickly take a look at your surface-based storm energy, and then after that, I say we move on to some other things here. But yes, we do have some stuff over there, around 4,000 CAPE in South Dakota. Again, sufficient for significant severe weather. You've already heard that enough times from me today. But of course, the severe weather pattern is not going to stop heading into the rest of June, into early July. We are going to have a very major pattern change, very big slip up here. And speaking of slipping, we're going to have a slip and slide northwest flow pattern developing, as we head later on into the forecasting time frame. We're going to have a ton of moisture blasting off to the north here. Look at this. We're talking about mid to upper 70 degree dew points. Even some lower 80 degree dew points will be mixed in as well. And continuing off through time, look at this. We will for sure be having a lot of corn sweat up in these areas here. That's actually a technical term that comes from corn. It does actually lead to higher humidity values. I did kind of learn that last year. And this, again, is very sufficient. Look at that. 80 degree dew points there across Indiana, Illinois, Kentucky, portions of Tennessee as well. It is going to be just absolutely abysmal outside, with all your heat and humidity. We'll take a look at your temperatures, your pressure, and your wind barbs kind of overlaid here. We're going to be talking about a massive heat wave as we move on through timing here. Look at this. We're talking about temperatures in your mid 90s starting to develop by the time we reach next Tuesday. And then this really continues to grow and develop. We could even see 100 degree high temperatures in the portions of Tennessee. So it is going to get very hot out there. Look at that, Atlanta, 100 degrees. And so this is going to set up a very favorable, potentially significant severe weather pattern. And your lower level flow, you can see a very dominant high pressure ridge right here setting up. Look at this. and all your flow curving up and around it like this. You call this your ring of fire pattern. And any storms that are able to form up here and kind of glide down the jet stream here could become pretty damaging mesoscale convective systems. It even could see a derecho risk as well. So definitely is going to be something to watch out for closely. And again, these wind barbs get a little bit stronger as your ridge intensifies. Your mid-level flow has a lot to say about it as well. You can see your omega block really beginning to develop. And again, you have your ridge riding setup, your ring of fire right within there. Your storms are going to be tracking up like that, are going to be going down like that, and then across like that. So again, we're going to have to really monitor closely for what could happen in this time frame. And it even starts to rebuild there on your European model, going even further out. So it looks to be a very stationary high pressure system that's just going to be chucking severe weather around its outer edges. Storm energy is going to be extremely high during this pattern as well. You can already see with your severe weather risks to kind of go out the gate here, storm energy getting almost upwards of 7,000 in some areas. That's very sufficient and significant. And then upwards of 5,000 to 6,000 here as your ridge begins to build. And again, storms are going to be firing off of this, sliding off to the southeast. Look at that, upwards of, again, 5,000 Cape there across much of the Midwest, going into portions of Tennessee and East Tennessee between 4,000 to even 4,500 storm energy. You typically don't see that there. That is a lot of fuel available. And again, you can just kind of see it here, your slip and slide pattern there, storms forming up there, gliding off to the southeast, very upper echelon storm energy values, and that really continues on through, and we don't see much of a break in that. On what our radar could look like, again, this is very far out, so don't take it seriously, but you're going to begin to see your storm systems, like you have one right here, that could be a potential derecho trying to develop there across, say, in northern Illinois. That kind of slips on through. You have a pretty long track system of severe weather just like that. And then we have other areas of severe weather developing. You have one right within here that would glide on off to the southwest like that. Again, there's going to be a lot to watch out for in this upcoming pattern. You can see it bowing out towards the end there. And then you're going to have even more severe weather. You have another complex trying to form in Ohio there. So it's going to be a constant barrage of storms riding up and down the ridge through time. And honestly, that's kind of one of my most favorite kind of patterns, because that's when I tend to get hit really badly with significant severe weather. So we'll have to wait and see. All right, and just one more thing. I have this new idea for the end of my videos here where I spin a wheel and maybe do a 2-day weather forecast for a random state. So we're going to go ahead and spin it right now and see what we land on here. So let's see, it's kind of slowing down. I was going to say if it landed on Illinois, that would be hilarious, but it looks like Colorado. Well, ain't that just the funniest thing ever? Because I literally just did a forecast for the state because they're an enhanced risk of severe weather today. But regardless, let's go ahead and take a look at things. Our high temperatures today, we could hit 94 degrees in Denver today. Look at that. So it's going to be very hot outside. Absolutely no surprise because of all your severe weather. And again, you can see your temperatures lasting into your overnight hours with low temperatures in eastern Colorado really ranging in your 60s here. It looks like your low to maybe mid 60s. In your Rockies, we could, get down to the 50s, 40s, maybe even 30s in your highest elevated areas there. So I guess that's something to look forward to if you like the cold weather in the middle of summer. I certainly don't, but we're going to move the clock on forward even more. And going into tomorrow's forecast, it's going to be a lot cooler out. Temperatures in the, in the 70s potentially. So that's a lot better. Maybe getting in near 90 degrees in far southeastern Colorado. Western Colorado getting upwards in the 90s as well. So kind of a polar opposite, if you will. And again, temperatures are going to be a bit cool overnight. Your wind forecast across the state here, we're talking about, really not too much to talk about until later on. You can see we do have some thunderstorms down here. As we take a look at our radar later on, gusts between 50 to even 60 miles an hour will be possible. In your Rockies, we're expecting gusts upwards of 30 miles an hour later on. And these storms really continue. We're talking gusts even over 60 miles an hour in some areas, even upwards of 70, maybe even 80 miles an hour in some of those storms. And where your enhanced risk is, we could see gusts upwards of 85 miles an hour later on. So that's going to be a problem. Going into the overnight hours behind your storms, gusts upwards of 30 to 35 miles an hour will be possible going just off to the east of Denver. And then we're continuing our look on through here, going into tomorrow, pretty much the same song and dance. We have, again, more severe weather trying to develop all the way over here, believe it or not. Gusts upwards of 20 to 30 miles an hour, even approaching 40 in your Rockies tomorrow night. Now, as we head into what our radar could look like, I just showed you this at the beginning of the video. We'll go over it again. You can see some supercells firing off into portions of northeastern Colorado going into later on this evening. Timings are, of course, up here. And we do have some showers and thunderstorms coming off the Rocky Mountains, which could support some strong microburst activity and damaging, potentially even locally destructive winds. And you can see this out here. We have multiple rounds of supercells and significant severe weather for the northeastern quadrant of the state, because this is basically a perfect rectangle, so calling it a quadrant does make sense. As we head into tomorrow, we do have some more supercells popping off in eastern Colorado, severe weather in western as well, and some microburst concerns for the Rocky Mountains, and more stuff into the overnight hours. And that was this video's State Spotlight. Alright, with that being said, thank you all so much for tuning into today's video. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to my little corner of the weather community, share this video with friends, family on social media, and maybe even feel free to leave a comment in the section below. Alright, everyone, stay very weather aware out there over the next probably week, potentially even more, to be honest. And I'll see you back here very, very soon.